Welcome, everyone. Yeah, excited to kick off our fundraising from the investors' perspective panel. And yeah, we have a great group together here, waiting for one more speaker to jump in as well. But to kick things off, this is going to be really a discussion. All of us have backgrounds on both the investor side and a entrepreneur operator side as well. So yeah, we'll kick off with some intros, highlight some things we're looking for. When startups are pitching and fundraising, and some areas to avoid as well. And definitely open to the chat question. There's two main areas you can jump into from the audience side. You can jump into the chat in the session chat here, and also use the Q&A feature all the way on the right for text questions, or video Q&A is more of a hand raise to jump in and ask any questions there as well. So yeah, to kick off, why don't we let's have XJ kick us off. Sara will go next, and then I'll wrap up with an introduction, and then we can dive into some questions from there. So yeah, XJ, you want to start?
Sure. Should we start with a brief introduction of ourselves?
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Okay, I'm XJ. Briefly about me, I was born in Taiwan, grew up in Michigan in a very white Christian neighborhood, went to school near Chicago, was a management consultant in Hong Kong, and I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland, where I have been for 9 years. I did my PhD here. And in 2016, I started angel investing and found it to be very manual, and have been building smart, equitable tools for venture capital since then. And then I fundraised for my startup and had personal experience with the bias, the investor bias. And so it has become a personal mission to help female founders raise money. That's me.
Love it. Yeah, Sara, love to have you go next.
Hi, so I'm Sara Lederman. I've been a 3-time founder. I actually started my first company in my, hold on. That was my timer to make sure I was on here. So I started my first company in my early 20s and grew and scaled that, and then moved into the startup space full time. I had my first startup with my brother, which was actually really cool and not normal. So I always look for interesting founding teams, because we were kind of an eyebrow raise when we started. I like to say I love boring SaaS software, because that's my background. And then I moved into just helping female founders. I raised my first round of capital in the Valley in 2011, when it was just very uncommon for women to be doing that. And I thought, this is going to change really fast. And we're still, under 3%, which is really sad, and trending downwards, unfortunately. So over COVID, I had a lot of time to just really grow that network. We have 1,500 female founders strong in our network, and about 600 investors now. So I love that. And working on our first fund. So yeah, I look for just founders that have a lot of empathy. I always say founders have to be empathetic, because you're not building a solution just for yourself. You're building it for everyone else. So that's one of the things I really look for. And then, just dynamic and unusual teams. I try to look in all the uncommon places. So that's a little bit about me. Thanks, Jay.
Amazing. Yeah, and then for my side, I'm Jason Kraus, one of the organizers of the conference, and have a company helping startups called Prepare for VC. So on that side, basically came in from a background in the angel and VC space with some early stage funds and angel groups here in the Boston area. I had seen how difficult it was for startups to even get meetings with investors, let alone get investments. Still less than 2% of companies ever make it to venture capital financing. So really wanted to set out on the mission to change that through, one-on-one support, cohort-based programs, and bigger community events and initiatives. And then on the investment side, actively involved in the Boston Harbor Angels Group and a partner fund we have called EQX Fund, where the real thesis is that first and foremost, you're investing in the founders and the people behind the companies. And, without even like, yeah, it's all about the leadership teams. And that's really, our model is that's the most important piece of any startup to begin with. So sort of to kick off here, want to get some perspectives on what are those most important items to you, or the things that somebody must check off in order to even like begin the conversation with their startup. Yeah, either one of you.
I'll jump
Sure,
in.
Sara.
So we are early stage, and really focus on female founders and underrepresented founders. And I think our perspective has to be really different, because there has to be a lot of grace in what we look for, because these are founders that don't have the traditional educations and they don't have the traditional startup background to know, like, these are all the boxes I need to check. And they have non-traditional educations typically. So we aren't looking for, the MBA and all of the other things, but what we do look for is team dynamics a lot, because startups are stressful, and we want to see a team that seems to be somewhat stress tested. So I look to see if founders are talking over each other. If someone's jumping in, I look for a lot of those signs. The other thing we look for is that they have a unique perspective on how to approach the problem, because I think there's usually a lot of people addressing the same problem. We see a lot of teams trying to solve the same problem, but it's looking for a team that they're just taking a different angle towards it. And I think that those are not quantifiable things. That's why I say it's really difficult early, because there aren't a lot of metrics to support an idea typically at that stage. So it's really about the people. And we've had a lot of discussion about, how you differentiate teams. And I feel like we do that really differently than some of the other funds out there.
I'll start with what we look for, a green light, and personally as an angel, what I look for. I really like it when founders are solving their own problems, and this is because then I know that the founder loves the problem and loves the people they're solving it for. And just like Sara said, entrepreneurship is everything but rainbows and lollipops. It's hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I don't have kids, so I don't know if that's comparable. I've heard it's comparable. But crap is going to hit the fan, and you need a reason to get up every morning and get back to it, or the next morning get back to it, right? And so this is a green light for us. And then let me.
I think.
We lost her.
Yeah, I think we lost you. If you can refresh here. But yeah, I'll add a little bit while we're waiting for XJ to jump back in. Hey, Steve. And yeah, so I mean, from our side too, one of the things we've highlighted at the EQX fund is really like, it's been a combination. The list has grown too. Started with one of the Boston Harbor Angels investors, on Mall Lawson, and the partner at the fund added to it as well, is 5 H's, which are humble, honest, hardworking, hungry, and a sense of humor. Because as XJ said, it's not easy. Shit hits the fan all the time, and you have to figure out, like, you have to have that sense of humor to take it back and go back to your team, get everybody engaged and excited, and get ready to continue to venture forward here. So yeah, I'll hand it back to you, XJ. It got cut off a little bit, but yeah, I'd love to hear any additional thoughts you had.
Yes, coachability is important because at some point your investor will become your mentor. And if you're not open to being mentored, then the relationship is not going to be easy. And that's tough on top of tough. So non-coachability is a red flag for me.
Yeah. No, I like that. And then, yeah, and Sara had also mentioned, how you talked about your team if you talk about it in the wrong way, it can be a red flag too. So yeah, are there any other sort of pet peeves or areas that really turn you off in a pitch if somebody, mishandles the situation, or, what would some of those be for both of you?
Well, I'm in Switzerland, so and we enter startup competitions ourselves, and I'm usually the only female founder in competitions or in accelerators. I'm very used to that. But personally, as an investor, if I see a homogenous white male team, it's a red flag. It's just no.
I completely agree. I don't think you can build a product for a majority of the population if you're only looking at 50% of it. So you need to look like your customers to some degree, to understand them. And I always get alarmed when I see people building products for people that they don't experience their pain points. So going back to solving the problem for yourself as well. And like I said, I agree with the coachability. When someone is constantly saying like, yeah, but, or okay, but, and they're trying to just like explain out of, I have an issue. Like if someone's explaining in more detail, but if they're just doubling down on kind of the same, I have a problem, because I think you need to be incredibly flexible as a founder. It's definitely not a straight path to anywhere, and you can't be tied to one way of doing things. So I like to see people who seem really flexible in the way they approach things and the way they think about things, and people that are thoughtful and not so responsive immediately. That's another thing I just look for in personality, because we are a partner, we bring capital, and you bring a product. So we look at it as a relationship. It's not transactional to us. So they have to be people that we would, want to sit around with and have a cup of coffee and tell jokes, and that they feel like too, on the flip side, when things are going really wrong and they're crying in their office because they're, something is not working, a product update's not going well, or they're not getting customers. I want them on the flip side to know that we're a partner that they can call. And we do have operator experience, and that we can add value in more than just the transaction side. So I think that making sure that relationship is there too, that there's a comfortable feeling between both us and the founders, and that's definitely a two-sided relationship. I always go back to my dating references, which is like, you got to kind of date and see if there's a person you'd want to at least marry and co-parent your company with.
Yeah, no, a lot of great points there. Like I'd say diversity of the team is important, making sure, especially, perspectives that are going to touch out to all of your customers, all the partners you need to reach out to, and just having that diversity of thought as well. So, even backgrounds of, if somebody's coming from more of a business perspective and a technical perspective, always makes a good match on the team there. If somebody's coming from, one challenger, or if somebody's most excited about one challenge your customers faces and somebody else has a different perspective that the customers still also face, and bring that expertise to the team, can create a really nice balance and sort of, how you think about the vision and the future of the company as well. And yeah, definitely the feedback side, investors, like, not there to, or I think it helps. Part of this panel discussion too on the investor's perspective is like, just because an investor is like, giving you, it should be taken as giving you feedback to help you with the next pitch, regardless of whether or not they invest. Obviously, there's examples where, might not be the best. There's investors that, haven't shared positive advice or, good advice with you as well. But in general, most investors are coming in as a way to figure out how to support the company in one way or another. And the frame of reference to look at, and this is where, I want to jump into a little bit more of like, how do we actually, or how should the startup founders in the audience come in and approach investors, is, if you look at a general portfolio, it's going to be maybe 1,000 entrepreneurs coming through a pipeline in a given year that end up into 5 or 6 investments by a VC fund. And, it doesn't mean, if you weren't invested by a VC, it doesn't mean they weren't excited by you. It might mean you were company 7 or 8 or 15 on the list. So yeah, how do you recommend entrepreneurs take that mindset and sort of figure out how they actually get started connecting and building relationships with investors?
I get updates and update reports from deals which I have passed, and I like them because they friendly remind me of what they have been doing. Traction, new traction, progress. And if they were number 7 or 8, then by doing this, easily bumps them into number 2 or 3, because you just you feel like you're riding the journey with them, and you get to gauge the effort and the progress they make, and I think this makes a difference.
Yeah, I love that, because again, this is all really super early stage stuff. I mean, it's different for different stages, but those investor updates are really important, because sometimes we're starting with people, really, really early, and they're we're making our decision while they're along the way. So getting those are really important, and they don't have to be a lot, just a high level overview. The good, bad, and always an ask is what I say. So if you can ask your advisors or investors or the community for something, then you'll usually engage 1 or 2, and at least you'll get a pulse on who's reading it. So that's always helpful too. You'll know who's tracking. I think it's important to network with other founders. One of the biggest things that I say is build community, because these founders are also talking to investors or being invested in by investors, and referrals is the strongest way. I know that's hard for people that are under networked. I know that. But there's a lot of spaces that you can go and make those connections and follow along. I love when people ask where we are in our fund. I think that's really helpful because we can then explain kind of where we're at and what we're looking for, and they have an idea. And I always say to no is just a no for now. You never know if, you know, a later fund comes along. You know, we raise in cycles and deploy in cycles. So, you know, it might just be a no for right now. So never discount or write someone off. The other thing is, even if down the road you're not a fit for our fund, but you're killing it, and we know a later stage fund, we can, you know, always say, hey, if you know, you can say to us, we need an intro to this fund. We feel like we're a good fit, and you've kept in touch with us, and we're happy to make that referral. Or we're like, darn, we really missed on this. Hey, you should take a look at this because this fits your thesis, or this fits where your stage is. So it's just really keeping that network alive too. It's that's the most important, I think, is to kind of work into the ecosystem and then add a lot of value to people and stay there.
I think that's definitely fundraising.
I think we lost you, Jason. Is it just me?
Yes, but your microphone was on and off.
Oh, okay. That's great. Yeah, let's just start here. Yes,
I'm Jason Fernando. But for whatever reason, fundraising is Jason.
I don't know, Jason. I think Fernando's coming in on top of you. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know. We're having technical difficulties. Okay. Steve's hopping in. You're on mute, Steve.
I'm here to save the day, but I can't even okay. So Fernando, I think you might have logged in using Jason's invite instead of your own. I think that's exactly what happens. So that's why Jason's sound was cutting out and why we lost Jason. Okay.
Yeah.
You're in some part of the universe right now, Jason.
One of you needs to log out.
Which one is it going to be?
I don't know. We have a replacement Jason now. Fernando, you're looking a lot like Jason Kraus.
So should we keep the conversation going? Do you want me to log out and try to log in again? What's your recommendations here?
I can. Okay, now it's black again. So I think Jason is still trying to. Okay, Jason is.
Am I good?
The real. Okay, yes. No.
The real Jason, please stand up.
This is startup life, everybody. This is startup life, everyone. Basically. Okay. So somebody has to log. We got some real Matrix stuff happening now. Oh, okay. We were going through this yesterday too. I think basically, I agree, Karen. Technology is great when it works, or the user can make it work. That's the takeaway from today's discussion.
Okay, well, the guys are figuring it out. Then I'm going to put XJ in the hot seat. This is one thing we do on our weekly founder calls for women.
It's true.
I'm gonna put you in the investor and the founder hot seat while we're waiting for the guys. So one of the things that's really interesting, but you've also raised money as a founder. So what are some of the things that you experienced as a founder for some of the founders out here that haven't raised capital yet? What was one of the things that you really learned that you wish other founders knew before they started?
Rejection. Get used to it. Get comfortable with hearing no. 'Cause you're going to hear many. And we were just, and Sara and I were just talking about, well, how do we keep the connection with investors? How do we, even after the no's, how do we get back to it? And my answer is show up, just keep showing up. Keep applying to competitions, keep applying for awards, accelerators, incubators, boot camps, whatever. Keep applying to them for them. And don't be, and get used to say to rejections, but also get used to criticism, and then filter out the constructive ones, and then ponder, because it's most likely at some point you'll need to pivot, whether it's your product, your business model, or your team. And same question back to Sara and Fernando.
I don't think Fernando heard it. I said we've all raised money as founders as well. So what is the one thing that you would like other founders to know before they start fundraising?
Yeah.
Something that you wish you knew when you started.
You know, one that always strikes me is that many people just assume that a pitch deck will be enough, right? And one of the things that I found, these days when I advise startups and when I'm raising capital myself, I always create kind of a data room beforehand, just before I go into the fundraising round, right? And I kind of create all the documents that I think people would want to deep dive on, right? Because a pitch deck is great for a demo day, right? But it's not really, doesn't really have the depth. So for instance, in early stage investment, you're really investing in the team, right? So beyond just having some little pictures and a little bio of people, I really want to deep dive on who's the team, right? And who is it that I'm investing in? And the same with product and so on and so. The way I often advise people to think about that data room is think of your pitch deck as kind of the tip of the pyramid, right? That kind of has your executive summary of what is it that you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. But eventually, people want to deep dive and want to have kind of deeper perspectives. So be proactive and be ready to have those conversations, because oftentimes what I see is that people go out fundraising with a pitch deck, then they're being asked a ton of questions, and then they are being reactive in terms of answering those questions instead of kind of taking the reins of the conversation, right? So one of the things I wish I knew, I constantly advise people, is to anticipate, right? And have kind of a data room or these backup documents that deep dive on the critical issues of the business, whether it's the unit economics or the team or the business model or the product or the user experience or strategic partnerships, whatever it is that's making kind of your thing unique. Be sure to show that backup and that richness, right? Because it's going to be useful.
And Sara and I have already answered this question, but Fernando, what would be a red flag and a green light for you for an investment? When you're making that decision, what will make you say no? And what will make you say, yes, let me hear more?
Yeah. Well, the red flag for me is always dishonesty, right? I think entrepreneurs are always threading and walking a very thin line between kind of the vision and describing their traction and describing all the good things and exaggeration and then misrepresentation. So I'm always looking for how entrepreneurs are making those distinctions and whether they are misrepresenting or not. And whenever they're misrepresenting, that for me is a super red flag, right? Because I know that, I mean, maybe a little bit of wishful thinking is okay, right? And that maybe a little bit of exaggeration might be okay, but you need to be very careful on not going into misrepresentation, which to me is the most serious of flags, right? Other flags that I look for is really the chemistry within the team and the commitment within the team. I don't believe in kind of a one-man shows and people that kind of have assembled teams. I'm a strong believer of minimum viable teams and the kind of the strength of the team. So I always look at that, and if I don't see that, it to me is another red flag. I'm less concerned about the idea, about kind of the value proposition. All of that can be morphed in the process, right? But kind of the team and the values of the team to me are super important. And for me, the green lights are when I see that there's a connection between kind of entrepreneurial drive and vision and business savviness, because oftentimes you see entrepreneurs, they want to change the world, but they're really not good business people. They don't really have the wherewithal to actually manage a company, right? And sometimes people, I think the media does a terrible disservice to the entrepreneurial ecosystem by just kind of emphasizing grand visions and all that. But in the end, you need to run a business, and you need to make that business profitable, and you need to make things work, right? So for me, when I see a team that has a strong vision, a good product, a good problem to solve, but I also see that there is management capacity and capacity to make the business work. That's where I believe that really turns me on as an investor, right? I can really get behind a team that that has that level of business substance beyond the lofty goals and the grand visions.
I agree with the jockey is more important. That you rather have a team than an A team and B product than a B team A product. But we can discuss we can discuss here about the size of the team. Yeah. Because, well, we know from Harvard research, 3 is the golden number. You want 3 co-founders. But then we also have outliers like Jack Ma from Alibaba. He had 18 co-founders. We have Amazon and Spanx, which is 1 founder. So here I'm not closed off to solopreneurs.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's why I like the concept of minimum viable team, right? And if one person is kind of a kind of superstar that can really cover all the bases of what needs to happen, right, to lead an entrepreneurial venture, I think that is very rare, but it can happen, right? And I don't close the door to that possibility. And if you really need to kind of complement with a larger founder team, multiple aspects of the leadership that needs to happen in a founder team, I think that's also okay, right? The governance is a huge issue, right? So I'm actually more worried about very fragmented founder teams than smaller numbers, because I've seen governance and just lack of coordination between the founder team to be a kind of a self-sabotaging element, right? So personally, I would rather err on the smaller side than on the bigger side, but that's just my view on the challenges of governance and founder governance. I've seen a lot of teams dissolve because of disagreements, not because of what's actually happening in the market or the value of the product itself. No? I don't know if that resonates with your experience.
Definitely. Number one factor of of business folding, startups folding is people problems, co-founder problems. It's people problems.
Exactly.
And MVT. I like this term. It's new for me.
Yeah. Well, I've written some articles on that. I'm happy to share and kind of send the links, but I've really kind of put a lot of thought into the concept of minimum viable teams and what needs to happen for those teams to be kind of successful. Happy to share. I don't know how we're on time. I need to apologize because I came in late to the panel. I had a huge personal problem, so deep apologies to the panelists and to the audience. But yeah, happy to. If we still have time, happy to talk as long as
we'd
we.
love for you to do a quick intro because they missed the intro. So you came in as Jason too and really confused them all.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They probably don't even know who you are yet. So do you mind doing just a quick intro?
Let me end with the start. I'm a serial entrepreneur based in Palo Alto, California. And I also run a small fund, right? Originally from Mexico, I came to Palo Alto 12 years ago, and I've launched multiple ventures, mostly in the intersection of either technology and healthcare and technology and education. So I'm an edtech and health tech passionate. I also co-founded one of the largest entrepreneurial training programs in the world called Trep Camp. We have students from 38 countries training in our programs, and it's an entrepreneurial simulators, right? So we put them in a situation where they can really practice and develop entrepreneurial skills and mindsets, right? So that's kind of my entrepreneurial background. Currently, I'm focusing mostly on developing closing the digital skills gap in Latin America through an edtech company. So that's my current focus. On parallel, I created a fund. I've been an angel investor for more than almost 20 years now, and so I've invested and helped multiple startups in that portfolio, from agtech, fintech, all over the spectrum. And I manage a small seed fund with 30 million in assets under management, with relatively small tickets for entrepreneurs that tend to be more seasoned than kind of younger entrepreneurs. I kind of like to invest in people who have deep insight on industry, and they want to innovate and create something that's that solves a real industry problem, right? So that's a little bit of my background.
Sara, what about your fund? Like, you briefly talked about it, but about the investment thesis, but I'd love to hear more about like the fund size, because we're in the planning phase of our own fund, and I've just recently joined the World Business Angels Investment Forum, and a new member of the forum's angel investment fund. But it'd be great to hear about your fund.
So we are actually about 45 days away from making our big announcements. We are pioneering a new fund model. So I can't talk about it too much, but we are looking for diverse teams that are centralizing fragmented industries by platform. So anybody that is enabling communication through tech, or streamlining through tech, or enabling communication through tech. So really, we look at a lot of obviously B2B SaaS. We don't really do any CPG, and we kind of shy away from hardware. Those are not spaces that we know very well, but we're generally sector agnostic. We're raising a $50 million fund, and we have about 10% of that committed already. So, and we've made a few investments. So yeah, that's where we're at. But I'd love to talk to you more offline about, fund management. It's so fun. And I'll say this to the founders, and this is why you should not shy away from talking to investors, because first of all, a lot of us have been operators. So we've raised money as founders, but being an investor is also raising money from other people to give to founders. So, we're all on constantly raising, but the other side of that is I love to let everyone know we're all stewards of someone else's money. So as a founder, you're a steward of your funds, the funds that have invested in you. And as a fund, you're a steward of the LPs, the limited partners that have given you money to deploy on their behalf. So we're all really, trying to do the best we can with the funds that we've been given, or, raised, or, some of it. And on both sides, we also partner with the fact that we put our own money into these things. So I think if you can step back and look at it from that side, we're all in this kind of together. This is a community, and it's not a us and them thing. And I think that's been my perspective early on, because I was really lucky to have some really great GPs early and when I started, but it's also how I approach fundraising. And I think that when you think about it that way, like, it becomes a much different process. You're looking for partners. You're not looking for someone to just give you money. And I think it's a way better and a healthier mindset, and also makes this a way less stressful process, because fundraising is stressful. I mean, on the founder side and on the funder side. So I hope that's helpful to everyone listening who hasn't done this before.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important, to understand, and in a way, in that kind of partnership model, something that also sometimes entrepreneurs don't necessarily understand. They kind of assume that funds don't necessarily want to deploy capital, and we want to deploy capital. Actually, sometimes we're pressed to deploy capital in an efficient way, right? So we're looking forward to hearing from your projects, right? We actually, one of the competitive advantages of funds is their access to good pipeline, right, and kind of good deals, right? So we are always eager to learn about what you're thinking, what you're doing, and because we also have a commitment with our LPs, right, to deploy that capital. They hired us to search and deploy that capital. So we're in the business of deploying capital, not in the business of denying capital, right? Obviously, we need to be good stewards of that money, and we need to make smart investments. But we are in the business of deploying capital. We've been hired to do that, right, by our LPs, right? So don't be afraid to contact funds. We want to hear from you, and it's also sometimes quite competitive, right? We want to hear about the deal earlier than other funds, because we're competing against other funds. At least here in the Bay Area, it's a super competitive space, right? In some other areas, it's less so, right? But right here, it's really a struggle to make sure that you differentiate your fund. So startups want to come to you, and that's also something to keep in mind, right? That maybe eases the tension as you're seeking to have a conversation with an investor, right?
Do you have anything to add, XJ, before? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Jason or Steve, if you're listening, and if it's time to stop us, you need to come in and stop us, because apparently we can talk on for a very long time.
I think 1:15 was actually, I'm pretty sure, was it 1:15 or 1:30? I'm trying to look at the
time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're
we're
supposed to be out of time.
Thank you.
But we lost Jason, so
And
I guess
I feel terrible. It seems like I was the culprit of kicking Jason out of the room.
um,
I don't know
actually
what
we should just offer, if anyone has any quick questions while we're still here and waiting for them to join us, please feel free to either, I think you can raise your hand or just throw it in the chat. If anyone has any questions for us.
Yeah, I still see some people connected. So yeah, happy to answer questions.
If they haven't jumped to the other stage. Maybe we have.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Chris.
Hey,
How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I wish there was like a 3-hour time block for us to continue going. There's so much amazing information, points of view, insights that you've shared. We have to do this again, I think, at some other point. But as for right now, I think people are transitioning from place to place. Thank you so much, all of you, for being here and sharing your advice, your experiences, your insights. It was fantastic, truly fantastic. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Pleasure was mine.
Thank you.
And good.
Are you going to
all.
kick us out, or do we have to leave on our own?
I'm not
How
going
does
to
that
kick you out. The way it works is at the bottom of your screen, there's a switch button. And
Okay.
if you click that, you are able to go backstage, or you can go up to the agenda and choose another place that you'd like to potentially participate or view, or you could just click out of the entire thing and go back to working in your daily life, IRL as we call it, right? In real life.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye.